Welcome to Kit 2, Theme K. This is learning from the spelling of was. The big idea in this theme is that there is little use in knowing what a spelling is if you have no idea of why it is so. And I think that's a very big idea. It really speaks to how Melvin thinks and how we need to educate our kids. Real spellers analyze the spelling of one word to better understand the spelling of others. This theme will explain the reason why the words vowel letter, the word was's vowel letter, is an A rather than the expected O or U. The pronunciation represented by the grapheme sequences W plus AR and W plus OR. The function and effect of the digraph QU. And the reason for the single rather than final S of the spelling was. In preparing for this theme, there's a lot of things that you can do. I'm going to walk through many things now, but I think knowing the needs of your kids, you may opt to do just a few of these and also pick a few items of the main theme. Remember, these themes are rather large, and so it's not up to, you don't have to teach everything in them, but you do have to give your children a sense, something that they can take away looking at the spelling of was, and then apply to other words. That's the whole point. So to begin, the phone W is a semivowel. And we've talked about this in an earlier theme. It's a semivowel because essentially it's a double U, U being a vowel. All vowels are voiced. The root of vowel is the same as vocal. While a phone that is a vowel must be voiced, not all phones that are voiced are necessarily vowels. The phone W takes the role of a consonant when it occurs at the beginning of a syllable. Very interesting. The phoneme W and the graphemes that represent it. W is represented by the letter W. In most Englishes, WH in initial position says W, but in some Englishes, it makes more of a wh sound, especially when followed by an O. We talked about this at length in Theme 7. The phonology of the grapheme QU. Q has no orthographic function specific to itself. This is very important again when we put up something, a letter line, and attribute a specific sound to each letter. Q in and of itself does not have any actions in the English language. Its only function in the English spelling system, is as part of the digraph QU. So anytime we're having our students write Q, we probably should have them write a U next door to it. The phoneme Qu is something that we're going to look at next, is often represented by QU. Real spellers know that single English phonemes are comprised of one or more phones, and many English phonemes are actually two or more sounds. So you can hear that with the Qu. The grapheme QU can be represented and make the Qu sound, or it can make a K sound. Normally, when QU represents the K sound, those words have a French connection, like antique, unique, and technique. Graphemes that have a final R. When I used to teach phonics, these were called sometimes R-controlled vowels. I believe this is what Melvin is talking about here. You can get more definitive information, and especially for our grade 2 teachers who are going to be standing on this theme the rest of this year and next year, looking at the ebook on page 3 might give you some more insight. But basically, this theme works with the two digraphs, AR and OR, which are part of the larger group of graphemes that have this final R. They are called rhotic graphemes. You can get more information by looking at the ebook. We also get into function and lexical words, the brevity of function words. Function words are usually written with as few letters as the phonology allows, generally 2. Function words are usually unstressed and include articles, pronouns, prepositions, conjugations, and auxiliary verbs. There's a reminder about auxiliary verbs, of which was is one, on page 6. Lexical words are stressed and bulked up to a minimum of 3 letters, which is why we don't spell egg, e.g. It's a lexical word, it is a thing, and so we have to make sure that it has enough letters in it. This is what they did way back then. Enough letters in it for it to seem more important than a function word. So the final letter is often, in lexical words, doubled. The main theme. You can start out with a large piece of inquiry here and just simply ask your kids and give them some time to explore, why is WAS spelled with an A when the sound it makes is once they do some exploring and some finding, they may come across many of the ideas that are presented in this theme. You know them and you know how to structure your classroom. So I think the key is having the background knowledge yourself and then figuring out at what point you want to teach into that knowledge. You do not have to do this all from lecture. You can let them start out and then guide their thinking. The rest of the tutorial, however, will give you that information. The letter W. W used to be represented in Old English as VV or two U's. The status as a semi-vowel has already been established, but you might want to remind your kids of that. It's already a doubled vowel letter, technically, so we never double it before a vowel suffix. The single letter grapheme W occurs fairly frequently in English. The letter W occurs fairly frequently in English, but the grapheme W does not. Since the grapheme W is only found in initial position in English, a medial or final letter W must be a component of a digraph. Learning from was. Over time, the pronunciation shifted. It used to be pronounced with a much more short A sound, and this is the IPA spelling that I've tried to represent here, but it used to be pronounced much more like waz, like ah. But over time, it evolved to be pronounced with more of an sound, was. The shift resulted in similar pronunciation changes for words that contain the same grapheme sequence. So moving forward, you could ask students to find words that have the W plus A and test out how they're pronounced. They could assemble an evidence bank, like I've shown here. They might also look at words with an SWA connection and listen and hear how they're connected phonetically. If a word is written WU, it is probably not an English word, okay? First and foremost. So we want to ask our kids to hypothesize, why shouldn't it be written WU? And after all my year and a half of working with Real Spelling, I quickly knew this answer, and I think our kids might as well, so don't just give it to them, ask them to think on it. It's not represented as W and U because it would end up being a triple U, and in English we avoid writing 3 letters in succession. When you get to the word one right there, for example, the O sound of that with one is another way that the word shifts. The grapheme sequence W plus AR. WAR is now pronounced war with an O. I think I started this on the previous page. Again, start with an evidence bank to try to determine why this O sound is now there, this war sound is now there. And you can find evidence that it is the W plus the AR sound. It's either it can go into this O sound. You, however, want to be careful not to confuse this digraph AR with the trigraph ARE because there will be a different pronunciation there, okay? AR usually represents R, like far, cart, arch, charm, sharp. But if the AR is preceded by a W, it represents the OR sound, like as in war, worn, and wart. So this diagram I found very confusing until I really sat down and thought it through and played around with it. I'm not sure that this diagram would be helpful to kids right away. After they come to determine this by collecting evidence, then this diagram might be helpful. The question becomes, what happens when it is the digraph OR that follows the W, as in word? And interestingly enough, that then makes kind of a short E sound, word, erd, and we can make an evidence bank again of words that do that. Worse, work, worship, world, wart, warm, and worth. The pronunciation represented by the digraph OR. Form, order, choral, short, adorn are examples of words that are not a rhotic allophone. That means that they don't make the sound, the ER sound. They have more of an OR sound, form. Whereas when we add the W in front of it, if the OR is following a W or a QU, we get more of an OR sound. Word, worse, work, worship, world, wart, warm, and worth. So interestingly, the association of Q, U, and W, the link here is that phonetically they have the common semi-vowel W in common there. You can see that from looking at the ASH when added to W and to QU. The A in both instances makes more of a ah sound, quash and wash. You can create another evidence bank, and kids can find out and infer and hypothesize that when AR follows QU, the effect is usually the same as when it follows W. Quart, quarter, quartet, and quarts. Of course, again, making sure that they're clear that this is not referring to the trigraph ARE, but just simply the digraph AR. The final S of the spelling was, again we get that Z sound, is a very crucial idea that our even youngest learners need to know, that the single letter S represents both S and Z. And there's an example of many words down there where it does